I was recently working with a student who was a bit annoyed with the metronome sounds and the level of the metronome as well. So I figured he's probably not the only one, and I would just quickly make a tutorial on how we can make changes to the metronome sounds and audio level. So if I press C on the QWERTY keyboard, then that's going to activate our metronome. We can also click here. If I go ahead and play back, okay, we can go ahead and hear that click track. Now, if we'd like to make adjustments, we would click on this wrench icon, and then we can see here we have accent, beat, and offbeat. So we could adjust the levels with these sliders here. If we'd like to change the sound, one thing that we could do is just try loading a different preset. So if we click on here, I'll choose acoustic, and let's give that a sound or a listen. Okay, and here at the bottom I have my own preset. Now we can actually change the sounds that are available by clicking on this down arrow. We can see there's a bunch to choose from here. So you can always experiment with these different sounds. We can also add a sound. So if we come down to the bottom and click on that, then we can navigate to wherever we have sounds that we may want to use. Go ahead and select that sound and okay, so I'll just open that up, and now we can see. Okay, that's not anything that I would want to hear on my click track, but you get the idea. So you can make your adjustments here and then click on Store Preset, just give it a name, and then you'll be good to go. You can choose it from the load preset, but of course, when you create a new song, it should default to the preset that you're saving. And I'm actually going to go ahead and load my preset back in there. And as I mentioned, we can make adjustments to the level here, but also if we open up the mix console by clicking on mix in the bottom right hand corner, I also want to make note that we have a little button here. So this is going to allow us to turn up or down the level of our metronome. Now, something else that I want to mention, also here we can turn off the metronome for this main bus, and take note that the metronome is still active here within our transport. So I'll play back and we don't hear that. But why would this be? That this would remain on, but we can turn it off here. So let's right click within the mix console, come to the audio I/O setup, and we will click on add stereo, and this is just automatically going to be called sub 1, so we're adding an additional output. Let's go ahead and apply that, and I'm going to click OK. Now we don't see an additional output here, but if we click on this button here for showing our outputs, let's go ahead and pull that out. Now we can see that sub mix that we created within the I/O matrix. Now I'm also going to come over to the wrench icon here, and at the bottom, I'm going to enable Listen Bus. So I'll go ahead and check that. So now we have 3 different outputs here. And this is the reason why this can still be active, because we can actually choose when we have discrete outputs, which ones will actually have the metronome active. So if I were to play this back, then we hear that on our Listen Bus if I turn that off there. So then we have discrete controls for determining which output is going to be playing our metronome. Now, if I have all of these active and then turn off here, then we're not going to hear anything. So just know that you have some flexibility when you have multiple outs in choosing their level and which ones have the metronome active, so we can adjust the level for our main, as we already saw. Also for our listen bus, this is going to be independent. Okay, and as well as our sub. Now there's another setting to be aware of, so let's come back to the wrench icon and let's go ahead and reactivate our metronome. And at the bottom we have click in play. Now when I'm playing back, we're hearing that metronome, and that's because this is active. So if I deselect this, then we're not going to hear that. But here I have another audio track that's armed for recording. And if I enter into record, then we will hear that click track upon recording. But as soon as we exit the recording and play back, we're not going to hear the metronome. Okay, so that's with the click in play setting, but I'm going to go ahead and put that back to the default. Now, the final thing that I'd like to mention is that we can render our click track if you ever have a situation where you would need to do that. So I'll go ahead and click on render, and I'm going to select between the loop range here. I'll click OK. And then now, let's turn off the metronome here in our transport. And then we have our rendered click track there. Okay, so I hope this has been helpful to see these various settings for the metronome, and I will see you in the next tutorial.